Welcome to the April 18th edition of the PFF Forecast. We've got a great show here today. We're going to predict the first 12 picks in the 2021 NFL Draft. It will go exactly as we predict them to go today, so you better be tuning in. We also have a return of a segment that has been long lost because of COVID. Stories from the Cincy Y, although it won't technically be from the Cincy Y this week. It will be good. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Justin Fields third overall syndicate and how that's going. Let's rock. All right, before we get started, have to remind everyone, the draft, it's like less than 2 weeks away, 7 p.m. on PFF.com. The PFF live draft show will be airing. There's going to be a live draft tracker. Our beautiful faces will be there. You'll get alerted when picks are made, probably before ESPN alerts you. Chris is going to be there. We've got Darius Butler joining us, Steve, Austin, Mike, of course, and Ian Hartitz is going to be in from Columbus. So you'll want to check that out. It's 7 p.m. on Thursday, 6 p.m. on Friday, and then noon on Saturday, pff.com. Make sure you check that out. It will be fantastic. And if you're listening to this on Sunday night, might not be turned on yet, but if you're listening to this on Monday, promo code DRAFT will get you a 30% discount on any subscription at pff.com. That includes the Edge subscription, which gives you the NFL Draft Guide, the perfect accompaniment to the next 2 weeks, especially as you're watching the draft show live. So promo code DRAFT, 30% off. Go make it happen. All right, got that out of the way. Eric, how are you doing? The beard growing is going well. I can see that even though we're not in the same place. I can see it here, so that must mean it's going well.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically that my razor died. And the one time I went to go buy another one, it was closed. It was like 8:05, which is like, yeah, where do we live when something's closed at 8:05?
I mean, Amazon?
No, I like biked over, I'm a two birds with one stone guy. So I biked over to one of the stores and then it was closed. So but so is life, George.
Are you going to get one before the draft though?
Yeah,
or are you just going to show up?
I'm still trying to decide whether I purchase some new clothes from our friends, our former friends, our current friends at Proper Cloth, or if I go a different direction for that. But what do the kids call it? The drip. The drip will be. I have
a surprise for you. You're gonna get the drip for free.
Well, look at that.
Yeah, thanks to a sponsor yet to be named. I'm not going to say anything until the signature is on the line that is dotted. But I have tested. So here's the thing. I'll let you in on how this process has gone. Got connected with a clothing brand. They sent me some stuff. I have personally tested it out. Okay, I have worn the pants, the shirts, because I wouldn't just put you guys in anything. And I feel pretty good about it. Some pretty sweet stuff. So all you have to worry about, Eric, the only thing you have to worry about is the beard. That's it.
I will have that. I will have that as the
here's what we should do.
Sorted by or as the adults say, I'll have that sorted by that time.
We should
also
the listeners
for all the people that are gonna be triggered by this, shut up. I'm going to get my second vaccine right after the draft is over. So that whole weekend is going to be like, and again, trigger warning.
Which day is it?
I think it's like legit it's Saturday, like right after the show.
So you're going to be Sunday. You're going to be in bed basically.
We'll see. I mean, look, you know me, I'm tough.
Yeah.
I did like a 20-mile bike ride today.
Look at you.
I barely
mountain man.
I'm tough. I'll do it.
I have a surprise for the listeners in a couple weeks about a goal that maybe you'll join me in. But here's what I think the listeners should do now is they should voice their opinion on what kind of facial hair they want you to rock. And I think if anyone has any good creative ideas, because the canvas is blank right now. You could do a lot of different things. Maybe they have some creative ideas. I've never seen you just a mustache, for example.
I refuse to do the mustache. For one, my dad had a mustache basically my entire childhood.
Okay,
I always
same.
tried to get him to go full beard. I tried, Jesus had a beard. I tried all this motivation. He finally shaved it off like right during the pandemic, so it's just kind of cool. I don't think I'll do a mustache. The other, negative mark for the mustache is our friend Austin. It does not seem like it is enhancing anything with respect to his life.
You do hate to see that, but maybe in solidarity. We could let the listeners know this as well. You and Austin are going to be sitting next to each other on draft day if both of you had a mustache. All right. So we've gotten to the point where now people can comment in the YouTube section when the podcast actually starts. We start talking about football stuff. I want to touch base on the Justin Fields third overall pick syndicate. As a reminder, for those of you that are joining on this very episode for the first time, Justin Fields to go third overall was plus 250 just about a week ago. And actually as early as I guess Wednesday was still at plus 250. You still could have gotten that number. Since then, it has shot straight down. He is now the favorite, minus 125. It got all the way, I think, to minus 135. Is that the case? In some places.
Yeah, it was minus 134. I think it's still minus 135 on FanDuel. Our friends at DraftKings have it at minus 125. But they didn't move Mac Jones's number. I think that, honestly, I could be wrong, and I have no idea what's going on in the internals there. I do think what it probably is that if you were going to bet Justin Fields, you already bet him and this is why timing was important. Timing's a lot of luck. It wasn't 250. I went over to Hollywood Casino in Indiana right after our podcast last week, got down a bunch on 250. It was literally like 180 by like Monday.
Oh, really?
And then Thursday is when it flipped to Justin Fields being the favorite, I believe. All people, there's a lot of consternation. Where is this coming from? Well, newsflash, the original line was bogus garbage to begin with.
It was garbage.
So it was just sort of correcting itself. Interestingly, we'll see maybe with Trey Lance, doing his pro day this week. Maybe we'll see some money moving towards him. He's 300 on FanDuel, I believe. 300 on DraftKings. I think 380 or something on FanDuel. But yeah, so we got the best of it there, I think. I mean, I don't see Fields. I think this line is actually relatively fair. The Niners could do something really stupid, and that's why Mac Jones is plus 150, and why Fields, I think, is favored, but not that much. The implied probability after you include all the other players is like 42%, which is higher than the 30% which was the break even for the plus 250. So you're getting a really good number if you got to 250. I don't think I could bet minus 125 right now, just because obviously we could be wrong, and they could go with Mac Jones, they could go with Trey Lance, but it's not necessarily about being right. It's about betting good numbers.
And that's what I was going to say. It's just like, this isn't a victory lap in the sense that, Fields is for sure going number 3. This is about, and we joke about this, right? Like getting closing line value. And by the way, this is a great sign for our new vineyard. Closing line value, Cleve Vineyards, which is going to skyrocket because of the syndicate, really. But you have 2.5 to 1, and that is by far the best number. And now, to the point where the market becomes more efficient, the closer you get to the draft, you see the true number kind of shake out, and you're holding a ticket that's way better in terms of the odds there. So I have a couple of things I want to float by you. So the first is, you hear a lot of people coming out and saying, my sources tell me this. My sources tell me this. And my hypothesis has been this whole time that everyone's sources suck, because the only source that matters is the San Francisco 49ers decision makers. And everything that we know about the Niners from a macro perspective and from everyone that we have talked to is that no one in the 49ers has said anything. So what we're doing is we're betting on the player that by far is the consensus third best, or even second or first best in some situations, quarterback in the draft. Like, the sources, I don't care if you have sources at every single team. What do they know about anything?
Well, and here's the thing, like, and we're mostly picking on, I think, the most cocksure of people, Michael Lombardi being one of them. This idea, like, here's the thing, like, Zach Wilson's going second to the Jets. And you know why I know that? Because that's why the 49ers traded so quickly, or traded so early in the process. The fact of the matter is Lawrence took at 1, Wilson at 2. It is known information. It's like it's the margin call, right? Like everybody knows it. So there's no benefit to the 49ers to wait, right, for anything to change, right? So they go ahead and go get 3. Extend that a little bit. Let's say Michael Lombardi's right, and it's not going to be Fields. It's going to be Mac Jones, although he like hedged a little on that VSiN video and said it could be Trey Lance. Okay, whatever. By the way, Mr. Lombardi, you have a once-in-a-lifetime betting opportunity now. Mac Jones at 150 or Trey Lance at plus 300. But he doesn't actually believe it's a lock, so that's probably why he's not all in on it. The problem is if that were known, then the Atlanta pick would be more likely to have been traded by now, because if we know that the 3 top picks are Lawrence, Wilson, and Mac Jones, that 4th pick, there's no incentive for Atlanta to do anything other than say who they're taking or trade the pick, because that's kind of the everybody has the same information, and so we should act upon it. The time value of it isn't really all that important at that point.
What I was going to say, in addition to this, is that I think there are some other bets that could be made now that are similarly smart. So for my money, Trey Lance at plus 300, if I were to bet right now, so say I didn't get Justin Fields, I don't think I'd bet him at minus 125. But Trey Lance at plus 300, I think makes some sense if you follow this train of thought. You're not trading 3 first-round picks to get a guy whose ceiling is Kirk Cousins. You're trading 3 first-round picks for a guy whose ceiling is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And Trey Lance, even though the outcomes are wide, he could be amazing. He could be, holy crap, I can't believe I was suckered into North Dakota State guy number 2. But his athleticism is also incredibly rare. And I guarantee you plus 300 is not what you see after his pro day. So I think you could get a pretty decent price there. I'll also say this. If you are hedging, like there are some very intelligent people, former quarterbacks, you look at like JT O'Sullivan, Sage just talked about Justin Fields here. Nate Tice has talked about Justin Fields on the 2-for-1 drafts pod. I would recommend everyone check that out. Like I would almost hedge by taking Zach Wilson 25-1 at 3. Like, why couldn't the information have been, oh, the Jets are going to take Fields and we're fine with Wilson?
It could be. And in fact, like that's probably so. And I said this on the PFF Daily Betting podcast, which currently is just once a week, but I think it's still good information. Ben asked me, he's like, well, what other bets are you trying to make? And I said, I did take a couple more this weekend, but in reality, I think from here till the draft, a lot of the numbers are being pounded in. You have enough markets, as we'll talk about when we try to predict the top 12 picks, where like there aren't that many off numbers, in my opinion. So like what you could do here, and I know you have like a principle against betting Mac Jones, but like, let's say Zach Wilson 16-1 to be first overall. If you have a Zach Wilson second overall ticket like I do, obviously you could bet that. You could bet a small amount there and cover a fraction of your losses if you want to. If you have Zach Wilson at 25-1 to be third overall, again, you can cover some of your losses there as well. And then there are sort of other things you can do as well. Like let's say here's what I think as well. If you like Fields to go third or better, right now you should probably be betting the over-under as opposed to the specifically third overall, in my opinion. Like that's and frankly, in my opinion, I don't think that there's any uncertainty with pick 1 or 2. But if I did think that there was, I would use the over-unders as a way to hedge. as opposed to the specific exactas, right? Because that, to me, like, there's just a lot of degrees of freedom there. And if just the right thing happens, you could be sitting holding the bag on a lot of them. It's also one of the reasons why I bet Mac Jones over 3.5 position.
What is where is Fields the price on 3.5?
Right. So right now, actually, there's actually an out that I have where you can get Justin Fields. So here's a couple bets that are interesting. I want to see your opinion on them. Okay. So I have an out where Trey Lance is 6.5 plus 110 to the over, minus 150 to the under. And then I have one where, and I guess Fields is taken off the board, but previously Fields is 4.5 and under was like minus 200. To me, obviously, like, you're laying a big price there, and it's probably why it's taken off the board. And I don't see it actually on DraftKings, but like, that's the way probably to bet him at 3 if you think that there's a ton of uncertainty that he goes specifically at 3.
Look, yeah. So a couple of interesting ones that you brought up. The Lance under 6.5, I think, is really interesting because that basically tells you. So you look at 6, right? So Atlanta 4, Cincy 5, Miami 6. Basically, what that is saying is someone is trading up to get Trey Lance, right? I mean, that is the takeaway there. So either it's Denver, either it's maybe Detroit has to move up to keep Denver from moving up. Maybe the Patriots move up, but that's what that line is saying. I also think this is interesting. So let's go the counter of you believe Justin Fields goes 3 or lower. You could certainly bet Jones, or you could bet Trey Lance, but you could also bet. So say he slides. You could bet Atlanta to pick Fields at 4-1. And to me, that is super interesting because if the Niners I think there's a legit shot the Niners take Trey Lance. Okay. I don't think there's a legit shot that the Falcons take Mac Jones. This is why I believe this is such a ridiculous line to begin with, because the only team anyone wanted to talk about for Mac Jones was the Niners. Why? Because Kyle Shanahan could make garbage look like a pot of gold. But if the Falcons are sitting there at 4 and Justin Fields is there, Georgia's son, I got to think that they're very intrigued about taking Fields, and they might do that. So I like that one as well. I think that the over-under position on Lance is also interesting, and I would probably it's tough, but I would at minus 150. I don't know, man. I think I would end up betting. I would take the under. I just think that someone's going to trade up for him.
Yeah. One of the other picks that I did make this week, which I thought you might like, it's something that I'm hearing actually a fair amount of.
Ooh, sources.
Yeah. I took Jalen Waddle ahead of Devontae Smith.
Oh yeah. Is that on
our friends at DraftKings? It's minus 105. So and Smith is the favorite, I think, a little bit at minus 120 or so.
You mean first? So you can actually.
Two. So who's going to go first, Waddle or Smith? I have Chase tickets. Chase is minus 625 right now, so he's a heavy favorite to be the first. I would say that the bigger threat to Chase, if you're worried about him being the first wide receiver taken, is Waddle.
I agree, and here I think are the reasons why. If you look at the teams that might be selecting, and we might as well just start with the predicting of the picks, but I think you could make a case for Waddle fitting in more of those situations than you could with Smith. So why don't we just get into it? I would bet Waddle, by the way, minus 104 right now. All right, we're going to get to the prediction of the top 12 picks in the NFL draft. But first, and tell you about a couple cool opportunities for you. On DraftKings and the DraftKings Sportsbook, you can use the promo code PFF right now and turn $5 into $130 if the title contender of your choice wins in the octagon when the UFC again goes to battle this weekend. Masvidal versus and Usman put on a show the last time they stepped into the octagon. And so round 2 is definitely going to be something that you will want to watch. So the way it works is you get 26-1 odds on either of them to reign victorious. So you pick your favorite one, put $5 down, get a chance to win $130. And if you don't like MMA, it's okay. look, I'm not a huge MMA guy. I'll watch it. I'll bet it. But there's tons of basketball, hockey, and then, of course, draft props and NFL team futures for you at the DraftKings Sportsbook. Use promo code PFF. Turn that $5 into $130. You must be 21 or older. New Jersey, West Virginia, Pennsylvania only. New customers are the ones that are eligible. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also, Underdog Fantasy. You may remember that name. It's been a little while since fantasy season has, been on the forefront of your mind. But Best Ball Fantasy is here, and it's here to stay. And Underdog Fantasy is probably the best place to play it. You've got to check it out if you haven't. Their app is super slick. Use promo code PFF. Deposit $10 and you'll get a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value. It gets you the draft guide, and then you have $10 to play best ball on the best ball app out there, Underdog Fantasy. So promo code PFF, $10 deposit, and get that free Edge annual at Underdog Fantasy on the Underdog Fantasy app. And now we are back to predicting the NFL draft. Let's get into it. So we're going to predict the first 12 picks in the NFL draft. And the reason that the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use kind of the betting odds, tying them together, looking at which players are either favored to go to a particular team, a draft position, who the first that position is supposed to be, all those different things. So we'll start with Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is what, 100-1 to be the first overall pick. So it's Trevor Lawrence 1. Zach Wilson is minus 5,000 to be pick number 2.
By the way, there was a really good, I'm forgetting the name, but it's Rob Pizzola's podcast. Rob is a friend of PFF and a professional sports bettor. And they were pondering essentially laying these big favorites. Basically once the draft approaches. And it was a really interesting discussion. Basically this idea of like, if you want to lay the 100 to 10,000 on Lawrence, wait until the very last minute before he can get trip over a garbage can and like tear his ACL in the walkover. But like those are picks that you don't really want to. Those are ones that you should have gotten a long time ago, and just lay off them at least until the very day of the draft.
Yeah, I guess I would make the claim that like you only have so much money, if you don't have infinite dollars to wager, I don't see a ton of value there. You see what I'm saying, right? Like for that to be worthwhile, you have to put so much money down. Yeah. Now, granted, you'll get the payout right then and there, but like, you can't bet on any of once the draft starts, you can't bet the others, So like, that would be my pushback there. I do think it's really interesting, man, that Zach Wilson is minus 5,000 to the Jets. I love Zach Wilson and so do you. And he looks fantastic in our projections, but I would say that like, there's a lack of talking about the uncertainty with him, which I think is being talked about a lot with, say, for example, Trey Lance, where, it's a really small school. He doesn't have to face nearly as hard of a, pass rush. He's got a great offensive line, all of these things. And we're going immediately to look at the throws that he's making, which is fine. But it's surprising to me. It very much surprises me that he's just locked in at number 2. Like I look at him in Fields and I go, you really that sure that Zach Wilson is better than Justin Fields?
I think the answer is no. So there's a ton of uncertainty here, right? Like I personally, and like we've been talking about Fields forever. There are some aspects of Fields that make me nervous. 28%, I believe, of his pressures last year were pressures that we charted him as responsible for. Kevin Cole tweeted out that, as far as, pressures that result in sacks or scrambles, he was first in the class. Like there's, everything about him is great other than those things. But then you look at Zach Wilson, who I think, my personal opinion, I think Zach Wilson is the most special sort of quarterback in the class. But as we talked about with Renner, that doesn't mean that he's going, like if I were, and I'm in a dynasty league, like if I have the first pick in the dynasty league, I'm not taking Wilson over Fields. If Fields goes to San Francisco, I'm taking Fields because he's going to be the best quarterback right away. But like and it was really interesting because we were the first ones that sort of said Fields is kind of that Shanahan-ian quarterback where some of those things he can avoid, and Wilson's sort of more of that Mahomes type quarterback. But then that always, like, to me, there's uncertainty in both directions with Wilson. Like, to me, he should be far more in the conversation to be the first pick than he should be. And then there's also this uncertainty on the back
and so
end
should Fields.
that he should be in the conversation with Fields. So, but it does appear that these things are locked in, which adds the context to the third pick. The implied probability is substantial with both of those, and you have to respect it. But that doesn't mean if you have some of these bets that you don't hedge off a little bit.
Here's a point and I'm going to reference something for the second time in this podcast. I was listening to Nate Tice on the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast, son of Mike Tice, former Minnesota Viking.
Great. Former Viking head coach and tight end. And
he said something about Wilson that generally I don't think is a big deal, but I'll make a case for why it lends credence to what you're saying. Like, we should just have more dialogue about this. He said, look, Zach Wilson's a small guy, and he's not necessarily short. He's just he's not particularly thick. You look at people talk about Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is like a big kid, like Patrick Mahomes can take a beating as he did in the Super Bowl and get up again and still make special plays. And the reason, I think Zach Wilson's probably playing weights like 205. He also looks like he should be like TikToking, for a living, like based on his face, but that's neither here nor there. The reason I think it adds uncertainty to the whole thing, Eric, is he was playing against athletes that are nowhere near as big as NFL athletes. So if you were playing at Clemson and did this, right, I would be less concerned because he's facing the kind of continuous battle that he's facing in the NFL, much better facsimile of that. Whereas at BYU, it's like the defensive lineman, like throwing him to the ground just isn't nearly as big of a deal. So that's an area for concern. I don't have that same concern with Justin Fields. Like, that guy's built like a tank. He literally played against Clemson and ripped them up with broken ribs. So I just think there is a ton of uncertainty there. However, for our prediction purposes, Lawrence, Wilson, pretty much locked in 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, both Mahomes and Wilson, had higher yards per attempt. They're third to last year. Then their second to last year, they had a dip. And then their final year is when they had the 90 plus grade ish for both guys. Mm-hmm. So both of them ascending figures by the time it got to the NFL. Mahomes a little bit better competition, but the Big 12 is what it is as far as competition's sake. So it's interesting. Like I said, I think there should be more uncertainty about Fields in one direction, whether he should go first or second. There should be more uncertainty about Wilson, whether he should go in either direction. But it looks like the market is what it is. And for the third pick, obviously, with Fields at minus 125, it was 130, it's 135 other places. I think Fields goes third. And then now we have to talk about what Atlanta does at 4. I gave you my opinion, which is that when you look at the markets, Atlanta right now, they're the position that they are going to choose. If you look at DraftKings, its quarterback is the favorite at plus 140. Tight end is right behind there at plus 150. Offensive lineman 10-1, wide receiver 10-1. So it does look like it's Pitt's quarterback or trade for them. Pitts is the favorite to be the first non-quarterback at plus 125. So I think if Atlanta stays at 4, I think you have to go with Pitts.
Based on the first 3, I agree with you. I think this is, and what we should do, maybe we should do this on Wednesday, is we should do drafts with pivot points. Like 3 is a pivot point, right? If Mac Jones goes 3, here's what the rest of the draft looks like. Atlanta can do either of those 3 things, and I think it dramatically changes the rest of the draft based on that. Here's the only thing that gives me pause. So I think that trade down should be perhaps less of a favorite. Hearing Thomas Dimitrov talk about being a first-time GM, wanting to make a decision, wanting to pick a player that you feel has a chance to be great, okay? Also, where did Terry Fontenot come from?
That's a good question. I actually don't remember.
Didn't he come from? And maybe we have to edit this out, but he came from the Saints, right?
Okay.
And the
Who was
reason
Jimmy Graham? Are you talking about Jimmy Graham?
No. So let's see. Let me make sure I get this right. He's from Louisiana. Yes. He was with the Saints. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up is, and I just really didn't want to get that along. By the way, went to Tulane.
Roll away.
Roll away.
Just
but
like our guy, Brad.
The reason I bring up that is, what are the Saints known for doing? Sure as hell ain't trading down.
No. It's about being bold.
It's about being bold. So I would go, and I apologize for the long-windedness of that. I just want to make sure I wasn't getting it wrong. But yes, he was with the Saints before going to the Falcons. I think he wants to make a splash. Now, if Fields is not there, I have a hard time with him going, you know what? I'm going to take a project at Lance. He's not taking Mac Jones. You know why? He's already got Matt fucking Ryan. Okay. Ryan will be better than Mac Jones for the next 2 years. So I don't think Lance is the guy that he stakes his claim on. I think he looks at Kyle Pitts and he goes, damn, it's not too dissimilar, honestly, from Dimitrov going with Julio Jones. Like, that's Kyle Pitts is a absolute beast. He had a 14 average depth of target and 0 drops. Like, that is insane to me. So I agree with you. I think Pitts at 4 is the one to go with now. And then we go to Cincinnati and Miami. So Cincinnati is interesting because with Pitts gone, it's basically Sewell or Chase. And so how did you – I guess Sewell should be the favorite. He's definitely the favorite in the market, but I do think it should be close.
Well, and Sewell's stock in the market, I mean, this is the one bet where I'm an absolute square. I took Penei Sewell at like minus 1,000 to be the first offensive lineman.
It's now minus 400.
Minus 400. So like I'm sweating this one out. His over under 6.5, as is Chase's. Slater's 9.5. Slater's 2.5 to 1 plus 250 to be the first offensive lineman taken. But when you look at, the Bengals, they did there was the rumor that they were going to like Sewell like a long time ago, but you look at it now and it's becoming far more sexy to sort of say that they're going to take Jamar Chase and pair him with Joe Burrow. Right now on DraftKings, offensive lineman is plus 120, wide receivers plus 120, and then tight end is plus 250. So this could go either way. I'm leaning towards Sewell, but that is a huge that's been just a really anchoring prior for me, because I've always thought Sewell would go there. It's also one of the reasons I have an article coming out, early this week, where if you look at the first non-quarterback taken, Sewell is plus 250. I think that's the best bet among them, because if Atlanta trades that pick for a quarterback, I still think Cincinnati takes Sewell there. That's what I'm going with, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if it was Jamar Chase.
Neither would I. And I just think that the way the NFL values different positions and their ability to get them in the draft, I think the common thought is it's harder to find a tackle than it is to find a wide receiver. And they don't even get to the value component of it, right? It's just like, that's where the conversation stops. So and I apologize for the background noise of Washington, D.C., the district right now. But Jamar Chase is the guy we would pick. And so for that reason, I do think they go Sewell. And then that takes us to Miami. Now, here's interesting. So we've got these lined up, first 12. Where do you think the most likely trade is among these three? Atlanta, Cincy, Miami.
I think it's I trade, so we're doing that analyst mock. Yep. I traded as a member of the Miami Dolphins. I think that's where, that's a pivot point too. When you look at the markets with Lance at 6.5, and I think that's a place where some team is going to take Trey Lance. I don't know if it's going to be Miami, but I do think there is a chance that they trade there to a desperate team.
This is where I would, if I'm kind of predicting this with trades, I think this is where the trade happens. And I believe that it's Denver moving from 9 up to 6 with Miami, They get ahead of Detroit. They get ahead of Carolina. They make sure that the Patriots don't squeak in there, and they take Trey Lance. And the reason that I think Miami does that is then you go, okay, Detroit is next, and then you've got Carolina. Now, I think Carolina's locked in on a tackle, as funny as that is. So then you've got Detroit there. And do you think Detroit taking Chase, or have they been burned by taking a wide receiver in the first so many times? Do they go with like Micah Parsons or something? I think from Miami's perspective, they could still get Jamar Chase at 9. So to me, this is where that trade should happen. Now, if they stay there, I agree with you. They are taking Jamar Chase because it's a clear area of need. He's minus 625 on DraftKings to be the first wide receiver taken. But for my money, this is where Denver makes a move.
Yeah, so I have it. If Miami stays put, I think that they're going to go with Chase. I think then Detroit sees an opportunity to go Trey Lance at 7. I think if Lance is the pick at 6, then Chase is Detroit's pick at 7. I would say if he gets to 7.
Talk about Jared Goff. I don't know if Jared Goff's a listener, but Jared Goff right now is getting on the horn with with Denver, going like, "Hey guys, you want to trade up? We're interested. We're very interested. I can get Dan Campbell on the phone here very shortly, and Brad Holmes as well, and that we can get a deal done." Because think about what that does for him. Trey Lance comes in there. Okay, that team is not very good, and you think about the type of quarterback that can raise a team's offensive performance if it's not very good. It's a mobile one, which is not Jared Goff. What Jared Goff needs is a guy like Jamar Chase or another receiver. And so that massively helps him, so that's a crazy, the fact that Jared Goff's career might be riding on whether Denver wants to move up is kind of funny. Okay. So if they stay there, we have Miami taking Chase, and then that gets us to Detroit, which you just talked about with Trey Lance. If they don't go Trey Lance, what do you think Detroit does there?
Well, so if Chase goes to Miami.
Yep. Chase goes to Miami. So we have Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Pitts, Sewell, Chase. Yeah. Top 6.
Yeah. Cause if you look at, so if you look at the Lions, that's the thing. So like offensive lineman is 5-1. Linebackers plus 450, wide receivers, plus 120. I do think they probably still dip in and maybe go somebody like Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith there. There's a chance that they go with Micah Parsons. And I think that that's why up until like maybe a week and a half ago, Parsons was the favorite to be the first defensive player taken. I would, the market would seem to imply that they're going to go wide receiver there. So Waddle, Smith. They could also go Slater too. I mean, it's not like their offensive line is great. I think I have Slater just going a little bit later to Carolina.
Yeah, I think so. I like the idea though of them going with Lance. It's kind of like the perfect situation for them. They get a guy with a super high ceiling that they don't have to play right away. And, I think it's the right shot for them to take. And here's the other thing to bring up with Detroit. First-time GM, so like I think Brad Holmes will be looking to, okay, let me make a statement here. I think that's why Lance makes sense. So then we go to Carolina at 8, and this one to me feels, we've talked about like the last 4 picks being they could go this way, could go that way. Carolina and Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, makes just like too much sense to me. I just feel like he'll be wearing an art smock with Matt Rule in no time.
Yeah, I mean, you would imagine that the acquisition of Cameron Irving did not dissuade Carolina from selecting an offensive tackle here. So yeah, it just makes too much sense. Slater 9.5 over under. I think Denver even. I don't think Denver's going to take an offensive lineman there at 9 if they stay put, because we're coming up on Mac Jones here, I think, from them. I think Slater, by virtue of what you see in the marketplace, they're also offensive line is plus 120 to be the first for Carolina, which is the favorite. So
Then we get to Denver, and this one I think is super interesting. So Denver is actually the favorite to, I think it's at plus 300 to take Trey Lance. So that's why we talked about the trade up situation. What I do think is interesting though is, let's say they can't quite pull the trigger. Maybe Atlanta, Cincy, Miami, they all really locked in on those players. So they stay at 9. One of the interesting things about Mac Jones, who would be the quarterback that's left over, is it keeps the door open for Drew Lock, who seemingly they want with every fiber of their being to somehow be the guy. And so I think that's interesting. I also think it's sneakily one of the best places for Mac Jones, because he has a bevy of wide receivers that are going to get open, one of whom, Jerry Jeudy, was an Alabama wide receiver just a couple of years ago. That would be, obviously San Francisco would be great, but like, I think that is Mac Jones lucking into a fantastic situation, and Denver getting a decent step in the right direction. Like, as a person owning, Denver futures, like, I would like that, right? I would feel a lot better about them with Mac Jones than I would with Drew Lock.
Yeah, and Pat Shurmur, I think, with history of garnering success from quarterbacks who are limited athletically, Sam Bradford, Case Keenum, even Eli Manning. Like, I think when he was the head coach there, you look back, their offense is actually a lot better than I think perception would give rise to. So that is, I think, a good place for him to go. Denver is plus 110. Plus 115 to be the first, have their first pick be a quarterback. They're co-favorites with the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, to take Justin Fields first. So they're certainly, quarterback is the thing that Denver is favored to do there. So by the way, we're through 9 picks, no defensive players taken.
Done.
It'll be interesting because the last time, so the record for the latest it took for a defensive player to be chosen was 1999, which is Champ Bailey was 7th overall pick by the Washington football team. And that was the last year also that 3 quarterbacks went with the first 3 picks. So kind of an interesting history lesson there.
By the way, you said, just real quick, I think you said Justin Fields. You meant to say Trey Lance. So Trey Lance, team to draft, Broncos and Niners both.
Sure, sorry, I meant Trey Lance.
Yeah, but I think this is useful. Just talking about it. So Denver Broncos and Niners 3-1, Falcons and Patriots 5-1, Washington football team 8-1. They were 4-1 just like last week. Panthers 9-1, Bears 10-1, which is interesting, and Detroit Lions are 11-1 to take Trey Lance. So, if you're looking at this is interesting, right? Because we're trying to predict them, and so you're looking at Detroit and you're going, man, there is a path to Trey Lance there. Certainly 11-1, because if Atlanta goes, okay, we're taking a player, we're not moving off this pick. We want this generational talent. Cincinnati feels the same way. And then Miami is like, well, fuck, Jamar Chase. Like, we get Jamar Chase. Yeah, hell yeah.
Occam's razor would suggest. So I'm imputing a lot of intelligence on the part of the Dolphins, because they acted very smartly as a team. Mm-hmm. But like Occam's razor would suggest, they made that trade so that they could get one of those 3 top 9 quarterbacks. And so that could happen. If you're Detroit and you're at 7, like, you're already in the tank, right? And you have a quarterback who has played that part before on the other side, right? When the LA Rams moved to LA, or St. Louis moved to LA, they drafted Goff. Keenum started for 9 games, gave way to Goff, or there's something there. Like, at 11-1, that might be something when, we go ahead and drive to Indiana next Wednesday and make our hedges. That might be one where, we might put a few shekels on it.
I like it a lot. Interestingly, the team to draft Justin Fields, the lines are also 11-1. Doesn't seem like there's been a ton of thought there. For Fields, it's Niners minus 121. This is on DraftKings. Falcons 4-1. Patriots, I mentioned that earlier. Patriots 6-1. Broncos 8-1. Washington football team 10-1.
Minus 121 is better, obviously, than what he's currently at for the 3rd pick. So that shows you that these markets, there's sometimes when one moves and the other's slow to react. That one's, leaving. If you're going to bet him at 3, you might as well just bet him to the Niners at minus 121. You're saving 4 cents. So,
Yeah, look, it adds up. Interest. Okay, we've got Dallas, and the NFC least. Dallas, New York, and Philly back to back to back. So Dallas, they're plus 100 to take a cornerback, and it was Caleb Farley. Now it's no longer Caleb Farley. Surtain is the favorite to be first corner selected. Yes.
Yep, and that market's been interesting. J.C. Horn was once 8-1 to be the first corner selected. Now he's 7-1 to be the first defensive player selected. So if you got some Horn early in the process, as we did, that's a really like a good ticket to be sitting on. But I do think it's going to be Surtain here for a few reasons. I think, Dan Quinn's the defensive coordinator there.
Their defense was so bad. It was so
bad, but like he likes corners, and Surtain, we just did this exercise for the draft show. Surtain had the second best athleticism score among cornerbacks in this draft class. Mel Infano's brother was first. You have Trayvon Diggs there. What was Dan Quinn's signature in Seattle? It was having good corners. It was having good defensive backs. What didn't he have in Atlanta after a while, after Alford got hurt and Trufant got hurt and Terrell is a rookie? He didn't have cornerbacks, right? So you look and you pair them there. This, to me, is Dallas is plus 100 to take a corner, easily the favorite among them. Surtain first defenders plus 120. The favorite there he was not the favorite just a few weeks ago. To me, this is actually a fairly straightforward pick here, Surtain to Dallas.
I agree with you, which leaves us with the Giants and the Eagles. And this is going to be interesting because the way that predicting this out. So like the Giants spent a ton of money to go get Kenny Golladay. Okay. Contested catch receiver. He's going to be your number one guy, right? But he's not going to be your speed guy. And so you look at Smith and Waddle here, and that would cause you to lean Waddle if you think both these teams are going to take a wide receiver. And you look at the Giants and you go, okay, well, the tackles are gone. They took a tackle last year, so they're not, reaching on a tackle here. Their defense was pretty solid last year, but like, are they really going to take Micah Parsons in this position? I think that's the one that if they take Parsons, I'm going to laugh a little bit because I think Waddle here is definitely the pick. He's they're plus 250 to take receiver first.
Yeah, I agree with you. Here's the thing. I've never really been a fan of the Giants' approach to anything. But if Daniel Jones has even half of what Josh Allen had last year as far as an ascension, this team could be good. Like, right? Because they have Shepard, they have Slayton. They have some players on the outside. Ingram could be okay. They drafted Matt Parrott as well as drafting Andrew Thomas. The learning curve there. And you look at their defense, they're built really solidly in the secondary, and that's a bunch of bad quarterbacks in that division aside from Dak. So they could be good. Now they could screw it all up by spending a ton of money on Blake Martinez and then drafting Micah Parsons and completely screwing this up. But I do think Waddle, in a rational world, Waddle's the pick. Both he and Smith, 11.5 is their over under. Smith is a little bit favored to be the pick, but I can't see Joe Judge drafting a 160-pound wide receiver. I can see him drafting a more like NFL-sized wide receiver here. And that's, again, we talked about this. So that's why I like the Waddle over Smith pick, because I think if it turns out this way, I think there's enough teams in the NFL that think Waddle's not only better than Smith, but the best wide receiver in the class, that ends up being the pick there.
I think this actually works out really nicely for the Eagles. Like, I think the Eagles would be better off with Devontae Smith than with Jalen Waddle. And the main reason for that is Jalen Reagor, you can't have two Jalens, on the same team. That's the first thing. But the second thing is Jalen Reagor is a speedster, and you kind of you pair him with Devontae Smith, who's not slow by any stretch of the imagination, but I think fits better as their kind of go-to guy, with Reagor being more of a big, a big play receiver. And I think Devontae Smith at 12, honestly, is fantastic value. Like I look back on these and let's just recap them right here. So Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, Clemson, Jets, Zach Wilson, BYU, Niners, Justin Fields, Ohio State, Falcons, Kyle Pitts, Florida, Cincinnati, Penei Sewell, Oregon, Miami, Jamar Chase, LSU, Detroit, Trey Lance, North Dakota State, Carolina, Rashawn Slater, Northwestern, Denver, Mac Jones, Alabama, Dallas, Patrick Surtain, Alabama, New York Giants, Jalen Waddle, Alabama, and Devontae Smith, wide receiver, Alabama. Of all of those, I think you can make the case that Philadelphia getting Devontae Smith at 12 might be the best value.
Yeah, I think the biggest steal in the draft could be Lance at 7 to Detroit. I even think as much. Again, the problem with Mac Jones is never that he's a bad prospect. It's him compared to Fields. I think Jones at 9 to Denver is a great value, and I think Smith to Philadelphia is a terrific value there too. I'm excited to see how these things shake up. There's a little bit of anchoring I think we have with respect to Sewell, but sometimes all this smoke near the end of the process ends up being just that. And I think Sewell at 5 is the one where maybe that one's maybe something that we're anchoring on. But I'm willing to go with it.
Yeah, that's why it's so hard to predict, but we give it a shot. All right, we are going to close this out with, I'm going to tell us a little story here. So I haven't gone to a real gym in a real long time. We used to go to the Cincinnati Y. We were going to tell, if you're new to this podcast, we had a segment called Stories from the Cincy Y. And as you can imagine, the Cincinnati Y has, as great of a gym as it is, has some funny situations that arise, whether it be in the locker room, the steam room, the pool, wherever it may be. There's some crazy shit that happens. So because of the pandemic, I have not been working out at a gym. And I'm in DC at the moment. And the gym in the apartment here is reservation only. And it's only 2 people at a time. And everything was booked up on Friday. So I am doing some searching. There's a gym right down the street that had, you could get like a trial pass. I'm like, okay, let's get it here. I gotta get a workout in. So I get the trial pass. I show up. Now, first off, I have not been to a gym other than the Cincinnati Y in a long time also. And apparently gyms are basically nightclubs at this point. Like, so this is the first thing I was going to mention. Everything is dark. There's like blue and purple and orange, like fluorescent lights everywhere. I was weirded out. It was very strange. Okay. I felt like I was in a club. Okay. So I'm in there.
Isn't that just like what Equinox is from what I can tell?
No, the Equinoxes that I have been to are at least
I think is
are actually well lit. This, I shit you not, it was like dark. Okay. It was fucking dark. There are also a ridiculous number of trainers. Like 1 out of every 3 people there had a trainer, which was interesting. And not a lot of people actually sweating. So very interesting dynamic there. Okay, I'm going to cut to the chase here. So they have a ton of equipment. I have been working out without a lot of equipment, so I'm pretty excited. I go through first part of my workout. I do a run. I do a bike. And now I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to do some strength. So they've got barbells. I haven't used a barbell in forever. I'm really excited. So I am doing overhead reverse lunges. And I'm taking it easy. I'm working up. I'm stacking the weight on there progressively, making sure everything feels good. But I had to hop on the phone. So I get on the phone. I'm on set 5 of 6. I get on the phone and 15 minutes go by. I get off the phone and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to hop right back in. I'm an idiot. So, I don't have a ton of weight on there. I think I had 205. And first one, I go back. I'm like, oh, I'm a little cold here. Second one, I go back and no joke, like I had headphones in. I heard my quad pop. I crumbled to the floor. Just an absolute disaster. I'm like crawling around. I'm almost throwing up because the pain is so intense. And I can barely walk at this point. Not good.
Yeah, that's not great. As somebody who's been injured before, hurt a calf muscle significantly during like literally the week after the Super Bowl last year. Had my fair share of injuries during my career. The pop, hearing the gunshot to the back of the leg or the front of the leg feeling is just an absolute travesty. I gotta say though, and look, if anybody from the Cincy Y is listening to the podcast, hit us up for free subscriptions, because I would say, we come into the office like once a week. I try to do now. We should be playing, couple 3-on-3 games at the Y, starting pretty soon here, and then that way we can chronicle them. If we do them like before the podcast, can you imagine?
I can't, because we'd probably look pretty special during the podcast. Also, right now, I can't even think about. Okay, so me, I had to try and get. I can't not work out, so I'm like trying to work out. I tried to go on like a light jog, not happen, not even remotely close to happening. So I'm not in basketball shape right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get into basketball shape. Like I'm in like jogging shape and like, biking up hills shape. But you
look like you're in chopping wood shape.
Right. Like my Paul Bunyan, Minnesota coming through. I need to start raining threes. I need to just get in and start, shooting the ball a little bit.
Get your page on. Yep. You'll work on your three. I'll work on my quad. We'll make it happen. We'll be back on Wednesday, as we usually are, Wednesday evening. Thanks for hanging out with us. Remember, go to pff.com. Get yourself 30% off any subscription. See you on Wednesday. Peace out.